price versus performance. Hey, it's Chris. Today we're going to be comparing Apple's most wallet-friendly iPad, the 10th gen, versus its flagship giant, the 12.9-inch iPad Pro. So as we explore the bang for the buck, let's look at the price difference. The 10th gen iPad base model starts at $449, whereas the base model iPad Pro starts at $1,099. That's a $650 difference. Now what we want to explore here is, what do you get for all that extra money? / do you need it? / did Apple do enough to differentiate the top end from the bottom end? And just to spice things up a little more, we've got the full complement of Apple accessories. So we've got the Magic Keyboard Folio and the USB-C Apple Pencil over on the base model. We've got the full featured Apple Pencil and Magic Keyboard for the Pro. When you throw the accessories into the equation, then there's about an $800 difference in this setup. Let's talk a little bit about the design and build quality here. Let me just rip off that cover so you can see we do have a really nice metallic color option here on the base model. Probably not for everybody, but it is nice and colorful, bright, but will probably spend most of its time covered up. The iPad Pro, on the other hand, is all business. If you're just looking for pure professionalism, that's what you get here. The base model still has Touch ID, so you're gonna be logging in, making purchases, confirming things with your finger. On the Pro side, you got Face ID built into the bezel here. Personally, which one of these do I prefer? It's not like one is way, way better than the other, but I like Face ID better. I find it to be just a little bit more convenient. Aesthetically speaking, this might be a little hard to see on the video, but the bezels are slightly different. A little bit bigger, a little chunkier over on the base model, and noticeably smaller, in person at least, over on the Pro. Now, here's where things are about to get really interesting. The iPad Pro does have some exclusive features that you're just not gonna get over on the base model, and these are things that might really make a difference. Number one, multitasking. Over on the base model, you have kind of the old-fashioned split screen, which works, it gets the job done, but you just have two flat windows side by side, no overlapping. On the Pro, you get to take advantage of Stage Manager. That means I've got all these floating windows here to demo, and you can layer those how you want, resize them how you want, position them basically how you want. So much more flexible. Night and day difference in terms of the personalization, the customization, your workflow, and how you switch back and forth between apps. Something else that's huge is that the iPad Pro has the ability to plug into an external display like Apple's Studio Display, which is kind of crazy because you do have USB-C over on the base model, but it's the software side of things, iPadOS, where you're just not allowed to connect for that extra screen real estate. So that's a huge differentiator. So that means already, right off the bat, if you want to plug in your iPad and have it anchor a full desk setup, that is paradigm shifting to be able to do that on the iPad Pro. And it really relegates this base model here to be more of a portable, supportive type of device. You can still make it your main device. It's just that it's never going to be as flexible as the Pro, for sure. Well, let's talk about displays. Obviously, there's a much nicer, higher quality display over on the Pro. You would expect that for the price. And there's a big difference in the size. So if all you're gonna do is consume stuff, you know, it depends. Maybe you want something that's more handheld and easy to just lounge with on the couch. Maybe you want a bigger, better, more cinematic experience. In either case, both look really nice. As you can see, this actually would be hard for a lot of people to tell that the screen was all that different, honestly, for your average consumer. But the other thing is the colors and the refresh rate. If you're professionally doing video editing and colors really matter, you need accuracy, then you absolutely have no choice. You have to go with the Pro. As you scroll, you're gonna get a smoother scroll with the Pro. It's probably hard to get that captured over here just through the cameras, but speaking of Pro, if you haven't heard yet, I've got a new course. It's available for pre-order. It's called Freeform Unleashed, and it goes way beyond the basics of what you can do in Freeform. I've gone into every nook and cranny in this app, and I've come up with ways to use it that I think would probably blow Apple's mind. You can currently pick that up for 50% off while it's in pre-sale, so I'll link that up down below. But let's talk a little bit more about these accessories, the Apple Pencils and the keyboards. Let's start with the keyboards. This Folio is really interesting. Yes, it's cheaper, but I want you to notice a couple things. Number one, it does have a row of function buttons across the top, which the bigger brother iPad Magic Keyboard does not have. However, we have some bigger keys over here, which you're not gonna find over here. We got some shrunken keys. Check out that return key versus the return key over here. The same thing applies to the caps lock key, and some of the other keys are just a little bit more squished over on the Folio keyboard. That said, when it comes to typing, I really do prefer the typing experience over on the full-fledged Magic Keyboard. I know Apple says that the keys and the switches are basically identical, but they feel very different to me. I could type all day long over here and everything would come out like very nicely. Over here, it just does feel a little more cramped. The travel or something, I can't even put into words. It does feel a little off to me. Now I wanna be clear, on the Folio, it isn't bad. And in fact, I would recommend the Folio over basically any third-party keyboard out there, except maybe the Logitech Combo Touch. But what about when it comes to the Apple Pencil experience and handwritten notes? Things like sketching, making diagrams, mind mapping with an Apple Pencil. These two Apple Pencils are very, very similar. If you're just writing stuff, not a lot of difference. However, you can see on the iPad Pro, I'm not even touching the screen, you can see a preview of what the stroke is gonna look like. That's called hover, and you only get that over on the Pro. You don't get that with the USB-C, and you can't use this nicer Apple Pencil with this cheaper budget iPad. That's just not even an option. You can't pair them. Now, when it's all said and done, I feel like these accessories combine to make the iPad Pro just a little bit better, a stronger option for productivity, getting things done, a better laptop-like experience. Now, when it comes to the chips, Apple Silicon inside, we've got the M series over here versus the A14. It's not like the base model is going to feel slow or laggy. It's more like the Pro is going to feel a lot faster. It's gonna get you to the same destination, but quicker. So apps are gonna load faster if you open a game on one. You're gonna be waiting a little bit longer over on the basic model. But of course, when it comes to heavy duty tasks like animation or video editing or photo editing, AI, things like that, that's where the iPad Pro really shines in the performance department, and noticeably so. It's not an exaggeration to say that one of these has desktop class power and one is very mobile-like in its power and performance. Now, there's a whole discussion to be had about the level of Pro apps over here on the Pro, but I also want to point out that, just because this is less powerful, that doesn't mean that it's necessarily underpowered for what you might want to do with it. Quick little side story. When I started this channel many, many moons ago, I got started with a MacBook Air that was tiny. I had gotten it for writing, for blogging, and so it was not very spec'd out, and it was the smallest screen size. And then I got into video when I started this channel, and I was using that to edit 4K footage, and it wasn't designed for it. But I did it. I went slower than I would have if I had spec'd out a machine specifically for 4K video editing. But this whole thing about specs, where we're at today, it really comes down to the person and what you can do and what you're willing to do rather than what can you do based on the specs. Now let's talk a little bit about storage and the differences. Over on the base model here, you're looking at 64 gigs, which you can upgrade all the way to 256. Whereas on the Pro, you're going from 128 base up to 2 terabytes if you need it. So already at the base starting price, you're getting double the storage for the base option if you go with the Pro. And that makes sense because you're gonna have a lot of files hitting this, and it's nice and convenient to have all that storage internal if you can afford it up front. You know what might surprise you though, is that the battery life is actually pretty similar on both of these. You would think that the Pro would get 5, 6, 7 extra hours of battery versus this base entry-level model, but that's not the case. Apple actually officially bills the power and battery levels about equally on here. So up to 10 hours of surfing and web on Wi-Fi or watching video, that's the same over here. Also for cellular, up to 9 hours of surfing the web using the cellular data network, same thing, 9 hours surfing the web using the cellular data network. I'm not gonna lie, that's a little surprising and kind of disappointing when you see that spec. I have railed on this over and over again, but I hope the next iPad Pro really ups the battery performance. I don't want same good battery that we've always had. I want extra, a boost, 1, 2 hours. Otherwise, there's no longevity benefit between the low end and the high end. You might as well have the base entry level. Now, when it comes to the audio, there's a big difference here. You got 4 incredible speakers that sound so good on the Pro. I'm not even sure how Apple got such rich sound to come out of something so thin. On the base entry level model, you can have nice speakers. You can understand things, it's loud enough, but it's just not as robust. And it really reminds me of when you get into a luxury car after having been in just kind of like a Toyota or a Honda. Like the Toyota and Honda sound, it sounds good until you get into the luxury and you're like, whoa, I didn't know it could sound like that. That's kind of what we have going on here. But if you're gonna be doing any filming, let's say, you film, edit, publish all from one device, obviously that's gonna be a better experience with the Pro than the base model. So just to kind of put things in perspective here, the base entry-level model is really a gateway to the Apple ecosystem and Apple's tablet experience. It's a solid all-around tablet experience for everyday users. Let's put it like that. The Pro, on the other hand, is for those who need a powerhouse device that can actually double as a mobile workstation. It does have some exclusive features that are killer and that do justify the price if you ask me, versus any of the lower end models, not just the base model. I hope that this video was helpful in visualizing the difference between entry level and maxing out when it comes to Apple's tablets. Don't forget to check out the wallpapers. They're very popular and there's some freebies. Just gotta go look. The links are down below. I'll catch you in the next video. Later.